Order, order. We start with questions. The Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Tanmanjeet Singh Dhesi.
One, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Public services in Northern Ireland can and should be better, and this government is backing the Northern Ireland Executive every step of the way, starting with a record £19.3 billion settlement. Of course, there's more to do, and we will continue to work with the Executive to do it.
Tanmanjeet Singh Dhesi.
Mr. Speaker, like my Slough constituents, the good people of Northern Ireland deserve the best possible public services, and this government promised to cut the sky-high NHS waiting list, and indeed they are coming down for the first time in 15 years thanks to an extra £26 billion investment, and this extra money is part of the reason why the Northern Ireland Executive has a record funding settlement. But does the Minister agree that it's now crucial that the Executive and this government works collaboratively to share knowledge and best practice so that we actually improve outcomes for patients?
Minister.
I do agree with him. I think he's right to highlight that just recently we had the second best month in 15 years for a falling waiting list in England, and in Northern Ireland we are seeing the 70,000 appointment target has been surpassed. We've hit 200,000 additional appointments. I'm really pleased about Health Minister Mike Nesbitt's work on that, and the UK Government is committed to sharing best practice with those in Northern Ireland Executive to continue that work.
Sorcha Eastwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Minister, health is a devolved matter, but the fight against cancer isn't. Will you join with me in wanting to praise the work of the All-Ireland Cancer Research Institute, led by Queen's and others, and make sure that our efforts to address cancer aren't done just within Northern Ireland or the Four Nations, but between these islands?
Minister.
It was a privilege of mine to go and see some of the work being done there, and I think any efforts to bring down waiting times and for cancer patients should be adopted, and anything that this government can do in sharing best practice from its own 10-year cancer plan, I'll be encouraging.
Alex Burghart, Secretary of State.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On the issue of public services in Northern Ireland, over the past 10 days there have been a number of revelations about the procurement of services and goods and the provision of sensitive information during the time that Peter Mandelson was a government minister and his work as ambassador in Washington. Given that Mandelson was for 2 years Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, can the Minister assure the House that his department will comb its records to identify any possible wrongdoing?
Minister.
I can absolutely give him that assurance, and that work is underway, and we will update with anything that comes from that work.
Alex Burghart.
I'm very grateful to the Minister for that direct response. Will he also commit to return to this House before Easter to update members on the work that his department has done and what it has found?
Minister.
I believe that work will be published by the Cabinet Office, and I'll make sure that through that this House is updated with the records.
Gavin Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Can I thank the Minister, the Secretary of State and his officials for the constructive engagement they have had in preparation for a reserve claim for the Executive, and that through the work that we engaged in, I know that the figure has doubled, and rightly so. Can I also highlight the Northern Ireland Audit Office's report on the frailty within our Northern Ireland civil service, and within the last 6 years, out of 23 recommendations, only 5 have been progressed, 5,000 vacancies, 3,000 temporary promotions and a sickness level rising. Does he believe it is sustainable for the Northern Ireland Civil Service to ignore such changes for reform if we want to see the delivery of good public services?
Minister.
Well, this government is committed to reforming civil service here. We've said we want to move fast and fix things, and any shared learnings we can give to the Northern Ireland civil service we will do. He mentions the reserve claim as well. He will have seen in yesterday's supplementary estimates that £400 million has been given to the Northern Ireland Executive. This is exceptional. It will be repayable over 3 years and will be accompanied by an open book exercise looking at the executive budget.
Robertson.
Mr. Speaker, one of the constraints he knows, and I raised it at last Northern Ireland Questions, was the potential as a result of EU legislative change that an additional 60,000 GP appointments would be required for antimicrobial resistant drugs. That would decimate the delivery of health services in Northern Ireland, and I asked that he and the Secretary of State engage to make sure Northern Ireland was not a casualty as a result of the imposition of EU regulation. Can he update the House?
Can I thank the right honourable gentleman for raising it last month and again this month? He did so powerfully, and we raised his concerns with the European Union, and I am pleased, and I hope he is also pleased, that the latest draft of the EU regulations includes a full exemption for Northern Ireland regarding the prescription status of antimicrobial resistant medicines. I believe this shows the benefit of a grown-up working relationship with the European Union so that we can address issues as and when they arise.
Number 2, Mr. Speaker.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer questions 2 and 6 together. The Government is supporting Northern Ireland through the 4 city deals, the Local Innovation Partnership Fund, an enhanced investment zone and greater economic stability. Economic activity in Northern Ireland increased by 2.9% over the year to Q3, and it has the lowest unemployment in the United Kingdom.
Robertson.
Mr. Speaker, the Government is giving a 50% reduction to the emissions trading scheme levy on ferries crossing between Northern Ireland and Great Britain in an apparent effort not to negatively impact the economy there. Yet Scottish Islands are getting a 100% reduction. The Isle of Wight is getting no reduction. What economic assessment has been done to arrive at these figures, or are they simply plucked out of thin air?
Well done.
Well, they have been based on the assessment that there are particular requirements related to the Scottish Islands in terms of services, access to essential care and so on, and that is why that exemption has been applied in relation to Scotland. The impact of this on trade between GB and Northern Ireland will be very, very small in the light of the overall cost of moving goods and transportation costs.
Stephenson.
Mr. Speaker, while the rise in the APR threshold to £2.5 million is a welcome step for farmers, does the Minister recognise the broader economic concern shared by the Ulster Farmers Union that inflation and steadily rising asset values will, over time, pull more family farms into inheritance tax liability, even when their real wealth and income may not increase?
Well, I'm grateful for that question. As the honourable member will be aware, the Government announced that the allowance for 100% rate relief will be increased from £1 to £2.5 million. This means a couple will now be able to pass on up to £5 million tax-free between them, on top of the existing allowances such as the nil rate band. And the President of the Ulster Farmers Union, William Irvine, welcomed the changes. He said, in fact, we are in a better position today than we were yesterday.
Burghart.
The Growth Fund was a UK government policy that had been working, supporting some people outside of the labour market into decent work and helping address Northern Ireland's low productivity rates. But UK government have changed that policy and the capital revenue split in a way that works for Treasury but not for organisations in Northern Ireland. Funded groups are being directed to Peace Plus, but their funding criteria does not work for most. Can I ask, why are voluntary and community sector groups being asked to distort SEUPB rules rather than UK government policy adapting to local needs?
Well, I met with NICFA and CO3 last week to talk about this. It is a difficult situation because of the way in which capital and resource have been allocated through the Local Growth Fund. Of the 12 million resource funding available, we agreed with the Executive that 3 million would go to Succeed at their request, 9 million will go to the economic inactivity programmes, but we are exploring other potential sources of funding. Peace Plus is one. The other is the Northern Ireland Executive has a record settlement. It had £9 million yesterday in additional Barnett consequentials. It could choose to invest some money in these programmes.
Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Minister agree with me that Northern Ireland, like Scotland and Wales, share the benefits of a United Kingdom and its collective spending power, generating jobs and opportunities across the 4 countries of the United Kingdom?
I certainly would agree with my honourable friend. All parts of the United Kingdom derive strength and benefit from being part of that union, and we see in the figures I quoted a moment ago the benefit that is being obtained in Northern Ireland in terms of how the economy is doing.
O'Connor, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Windsor Framework was meant to give Northern Ireland the best of both worlds: unfettered access to the UK internal market and barrier-free access to the EU. Not so, according to a recent survey by the Federation of Small Businesses, who report over half those trading between Great Britain and Northern Ireland are having difficulties, with over a third having stopped altogether. The figures are stark. Less than 1 in 6 Northern Ireland businesses say they benefit from dual market access, whilst nearly 80% rate government support as poor or very poor. So will the Secretary of State commit to a specific, time-bound plan to make dual market access work, or does he accept Northern Ireland got the worst of both worlds?
Well, I don't accept that Northern Ireland has the worst of both worlds, but he does rightly draw attention to the issue facing small businesses, highlighted by the FSB report and others, including Lord Murphy's independent report. As he will have noticed, Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor announced a £16.6 million package in the budget, which will include a comprehensive one-stop shop regulatory support service to help precisely those businesses to be able to trade more between GB and Northern Ireland.
Alice MacDonald.
Question number 3, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll answer questions 3, 9 and 12 together. Mr. Speaker, the defence of our country is always the first duty of any government. Last week I met businesses big and small, the Northern Ireland Chamber, representative bodies, as well as our great universities, to discuss how the defence growth deal for Northern Ireland can pack the biggest punch possible. With £250 million across 5 deals, including one in Northern Ireland, there is huge potential here, and I'm determined that we seize it.
Alice MacDonald.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. In Northern Ireland, the defence sector offers many opportunities to apprentices, as it does across the rest of the country. I met 2 from MSI Defence in my constituency of Norwich North yesterday. Would he join me in celebrating apprentices up and down the whole of our United Kingdom? And can he set out how we will support the next generation of skilled workers in this vital industry?
I'm very happy to join her in doing that. In fact, just last week I was at Malahan, where they had 4 apprentices that were having incredible opportunities as a result of taking up that job, and they would, I'm sure, agree with my honourable friend in her assessment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My honourable friend will already be aware that the defence industry sector is well established in my constituency of Stevenage and is building links with its counterparts in Northern Ireland. So does the Minister agree that the defence industrial strategy presents a huge opportunity for businesses in constituencies right across the country, in Stevenage and most certainly in Northern Ireland, where it can help boost investment, job creation and economic growth?
Minister.
My honourable friend is totally right that it's not just about the defence of the realm. There are economic opportunities that come with this. The defence growth deal that we are working on in Northern Ireland will be taking advantage of that and ensuring that small businesses in particular can benefit.
John Slinger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The government's doing good work to encourage young people into their careers via apprenticeships, and it's National Apprenticeship Week this week. In my constituency of Rugby, we have GE Vernova, which is ramping up its apprenticeship scheme. We have Rugby College, and that's part of Warwickshire College Group, with 750 young people and adults getting apprenticeship programmes underway. Does he agree with me that it's vital that the government goes further to support apprenticeships in the vital defence sector in my constituency of Rugby and all across our United Kingdom, including, of course, Northern Ireland?
My honourable friend is absolutely right, and actually some of the apprentices that I met just last week explained to me, Mr. Speaker, how they were over 4 years over £100,000 better off for having taken that apprenticeship. So it's good for them, good for businesses, good for the country.
Samuel Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yesterday I met with 2 apprentices who are engaged in firms which are delivering defence contracts in Northern Ireland. They were enthusiastic of the skills and their prospects. Yet Northern Ireland benefits minimally from defence contracts across the United Kingdom. What steps is the Minister taking to ensure that more defence contracts come to Northern Ireland, and will he ignore the comments of the First Minister, who does not want defence contracts awarded to Northern Ireland?
This government is supporting businesses in Northern Ireland. The work that I'm doing with them on the defence growth deal is designed specifically to ensure this will benefit them and all of their supply chains as well, and I'll continue to do that work.
Katie Lamb.
Speaker,
Whatever the defence industrial strategy aims to do, its aims will not be met if we cannot find and recruit people willing to use the equipment and technology that is created. People will be far less likely to risk their lives to keep our country safe and free if they can't rely on the government to stand by them, both during and after their service. So can the Minister tell us, please, what assessment he has made of the impact on the military and the defence industry of this government's decision to allow our veterans who served in Northern Ireland to be dragged vindictively through the courts?
I reject the characterisation. The immunity that was offered by the last government was false. I don't think we agree with that in principle, and actually the veterans we speak to don't want immunity under the law, they want equality before it. It was also this government that gave our armed forces the largest pay rise in over 2 decades. This is a government backing our armed forces.
Alex Easton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Secretary of State agree that there is a clear need for a stronger role for Northern Ireland firms in the UK defence supply chain? And will he commit to encouraging far greater inclusion of Northern Ireland SMEs and MOD framework contracts and subcontracting opportunities?
Minister.
I absolutely do accept that we can do even more to support those companies. In fact, the companies I've been meeting in relation to the defence growth deal have said that the opportunity to showcase the talent and expertise that exists in Northern Ireland is really important. I want to support them in doing that.
For Mr. Speaker.
The autumn budget provided Northern Ireland with an additional £370 million on top of the record spending review settlement and will assist families with the cost of living by offering help with cutting energy bills, lifting the 2-child benefit limit and raising the minimum wage.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The government's child poverty strategy aims to lift over 550,000 children out of poverty by 2030. What assessment has the Secretary of State made of the impact of the abolition of the 2-child benefit cap for families in Northern Ireland?
Well, the lifting of the 2-child benefit cap in Northern Ireland will help more than 17,000 children and more than 48,000 people in Northern Ireland households. We are, of course, also increasing the national minimum wage, which will benefit 170,000 people, and increasing the state pension will benefit 330,000 pensioners in Northern Ireland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Cancer is a thief and a homewrecker, and sadly Northern Ireland has the worst cancer outcomes across the UK. I recently lifted the lid on breast cancer referrals, with red flag appointments taking in excess of 14 weeks. Whilst the autumn budget has been helpful, can he confirm if conversations are happening with Treasury for transformational money to help us transform our health service so that cancer wait times and medical pathways can be improved once and for all?
Well, I share the honourable member's wish, as does the whole House, to improve cancer treatment and cancer waiting times for those who are currently waiting too long. There is the Public Services Transformation Fund. The first phase of projects was funded last year. Decisions are about to be taken on the second phase of funding. But there also needs, as my honourable friend mentioned earlier, to be reform of the way in which the health service works. We're seeing progress under Mike Nesbitt's leadership. We need to see more.
Challenger, Shadow Minister, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, the increase in national insurance contributions is having a devastating impact on the hospitality sector in Northern Ireland, with over a quarter of businesses reporting losses and a further 20% only breaking even. So how is the Northern Ireland Executive expected to achieve its target of doubling tourism in the next 10 years if the Chancellor of the Exchequer is putting pubs, restaurants and hotels out of business?
Well, the increase in national insurance was a decision that the government took to deal with the inheritance of the last government. Well, it is a fact, and no one can argue that that is not the case, to put the economy on a stable footing. The fact that the Northern Ireland economy overall is growing in the way that it is, the fact that it has the lowest unemployment in the United Kingdom, is a sign of the fundamental strength of the economy in Northern Ireland.
Sir Hall.
Question number 5.
Minister.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll answer questions 5 and 10 together. Mr. Speaker, chances in life are set early. While, of course, education in Northern Ireland is devolved, we must work together So that's why it was my privilege to bring the Minister for Early Years to Belfast recently to visit with schools and to present to Northern Ireland ministers at the East West Council. We discussed the school twinning programme, the theme of which is reading for pleasure, and as a new dad I'm reading quite a few baby books at the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As chair of the APPG on inclusion and nurturing education, I welcome the Northern Ireland Department's Education's independent research showing that nurture provision delivers measurable improvements in pupils' behaviour, attendance and attainment. What discussions are being had to share this good practice in inclusive education with the rest of the UK, including officials in England, as the government seeks to improve inclusion and educational outcomes for all?
Minister.
Well, just last month, with the Early Years Minister, I went to schools that are really focused on being inclusive and nurturing for pupils. My honourable friend is totally right to highlight how this work can have such a positive impact on the children in our schools.
Just Upwell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister agree with me about the importance of the Northern Ireland Executive and the Government sharing knowledge, expertise and best practice as we all seek to improve outcomes for children in all our schools?
Minister.
I absolutely do, Mr. Speaker. I've always said this is not the case of cutting a cheque and walking away. There is work we can do with the Northern Ireland Executive and we continue to share best practice. In fact, just this week I wrote to the Minister for Early Years to explore further opportunities for collaboration.
Gregory Campbell.
Mr. Speaker, last year's spending review, the NIO announced a £2 million allocation to support the integrated education sector. Given that there are a range of schools in Northern Ireland that have been offering an integrated educational ethos for many years, will they review that policy to support integrated education per se across a number of schools in Northern Ireland?
Minister.
We support integrated education. Integrated schools are a really important part of that. I was recently at some shared education schools, which at the request of the Minister, I was impressed by some of the work being done there, but I don't think it's just one route for the schools in Northern Ireland.
Oh, Jim Shum.
Mr. Speaker, can I thank the Minister for his answer? Minister, the Education Minister in Northern Ireland, Paul Gavin, has been keen to introduce in the schools a smartphone restriction upon students. He has a pilot scheme in place. Government here are happy to do the same thing. Has the Minister had an opportunity to encourage the Minister in Northern Ireland educationally to bring in the smartphone restriction in schools, while there is one member of the Executive, one party in the Executive, who wish to stop that? The will of the people is to make sure that it happens.
Stop.
I was with the Minister for Education recently. This is not a topic that came up. Obviously, these matters are devolved and are matters for the Northern Ireland Executive, but I would obviously be happy to speak to Minister Gavin as he suggests.
Sir David Davis. Mr. Tonya.
Mr. Speaker, there are currently 6 Republican paramilitaries facing prosecution for Troubles-related killings. The Commission is already investigating a number of IRA atrocities, including the M62 coach bombing, the Guildford pub bombing and the Warren Point massacre. And under the Troubles Bill, the Commission will benefit from information sharing by the Irish authorities.
2,058 people died at the hands of Republican paramilitaries during the Troubles. 2,058. Despite that fact, only 19 IRA members are currently in prison. So the Secretary of State laughably claims there was no amnesty under the Good Friday Agreement, and he gives us these few he's just talked about. Can he tell the House how many prosecutions of IRA members he expects to arise under his Troubles Bill, and how many families of people murdered by the IRA will find out what happened to their relatives?
Secretary of State.
Well, the answer to his first question is... The answer to his first question, it will depend, as he well knows, on the evidence in any individual case. That decision will be taken by public prosecutors in the normal way. Secondly, he will be aware that between 25,000 and 35,000 paramilitaries were imprisoned during the course of the Troubles for a range of offences, including murder, and the purpose of the reform is families are able to find answers to the questions that they are still asking about what happened to their loved ones.
The Select Committee, Tony Antoniazzi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the subject of the Troubles era violence, this week my committee published a unanimous report calling on the government to formally name Agent Steakknife. The government have said that the Supreme Court judgment in the Thompson case has implications for their decision, but lead officers have said it does not. So what is preventing the government naming Steakknife, and when do they plan to do so?
Well, I have, of course, seen the report that the Select Committee has published. There are ongoing civil proceedings, and the government is, as I indicated previously, still considering the implications of the Thompson Supreme Court judgment for this decision. I have promised the House that I will return when the government has reached a decision on the request that's been made from Sir Ian Livingstone, and I intend to honour that promise.
That completes questions. A point of order to the question you raised.
In view of the inadequate response I received from the Secretary of State for question 7, I give notice I intend to raise this matter on the adjournment.
What I would say is, the Honourable has put it on the record his decision. What I would say, I'm not going to extend Northern Ireland questions. So I'm now going to move on to the Prime Minister's question.